How you doing? How you doing over there in Grand Rapids? Good.
Pretty good. Yeah, I
Yeah,
had
we
a
got
couple of graduation open houses today and from public school. But yeah, good day. Beautiful.
the Michigan
Beautiful
crew is
weather.
on. You guys, it's been hotter than Hades down here in Texas, so Chris can attest. You can testify. All right, well, I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah, I got to limit my outdoor activities these days.
Yep, get
Hi,
us
Chris.
moving a little bit. So,
I'll make you guys jealous. We start out with fog. Now we
Is
got
that right?
sunshine. Mhm.
wow.
California, Oregon, almost.
All right, so let me just kick us off and say first, thanks guys for coming to the discussion. I really want to try out this new technology to see if it helps us learn more, to be able to get a better understanding of things. So framing this around Mae Brussell's work, but it could have been Dave Emery or somebody else. You know, I have an affinity to Mae Brussell. I did a lot of work listening to her 800 hours of cassette tapes and plugging that stuff into the brain model. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And so then I want to talk about why this group and what would we do, like what would the outcome be if we were to do a little bit more of this, and we'll see if it resonates, and then talk a little bit about the tools so that you all are familiarized with the tools. And part of this is how can we make this interactive so that it's just not somebody talking or not a roundtable discussion necessarily. And then maybe talk about the episode that we sent out. I know that it's short notice and you all probably didn't have a chance to look at that, but there's jam-packed with really interesting material. So I'll go through a little bit of the material, see if we can wet the whistle for if it's, you know, something that you all want to continue to pursue or that it's worthwhile to pursue at the very least. And then after that, try to get some next steps from you guys to see what you think. Are you guys all good with that? Does that make sense? Anything else you wanted to cover?
No, that was cool. Yeah, I mean, I it's been a while since I listened to May, and she gets moving a little bit, and sometimes it's hard to follow all of her. I got to listen to it a couple of times, but I loved I actually am only about a third of the way, or maybe a quarter of the way into that second video with those two guys talking about Morgan Shield, George.
Oh yeah, George
They're-
DeMoore show.
they're-
Yeah,
Yeah, they're really on top of it.
those guys are on the money. That's a lot of fun to see that. So
Yeah.
yeah, so we can talk about that too, and we can decompose some of that information as well. So now May, her deal was she was just a housewife in California when the Kennedy assassination happened, and that was her wake up call, right? We've all had our wake up calls, or maybe we were woken up gradually over time, and this was her smack and slap in the face of what this doesn't seem right. What the heck's going on here? And so she lived in Carmel, California, which is south of San Francisco. So she's kind of coming at things from a left-leaning perspective, like an NPR type, Democracy Now type perspective. And she was on the radio for years and years out in Carmel, California on KLRB. And she had a couple different shows. And a couple times she was forced off the air because of death threats, because of the information that she was publishing. And one of her daughters was whacked Clinton style, Arkansas style. And she has a couple episodes on that. So she moved to Carmel after the assassination, and she kind of started researching and said from 1971 through 1988, she published audio on, and she sent out cassette tapes, and she was like a real character. So she was on KLRB. It's just some pictures of her. Yeah. And so what she did was she actually went out and bought the 26 volumes of the Warren Commission report. And then she cross-referenced them. She spent a couple years like indexing everything on paper. And she basically figured out the who, what, where, why, and how to the whole assassination, and then she started doing media about it. She started talking about it, and they invited her on the radio, and she was such a hit. They got so many letters that they gave her her own show eventually, and she was quite a researcher, but she could also kind of forecast events. So this is Bobby and Kennedy and Rose Kennedy on the far left here, and what happened, what they say happened. What she said was that in May 29th, 1968, she confronted Rose Kennedy at the airport in Monterey and handed her a note saying that Robert Kennedy would soon be assassinated. And then a week later, he was shot and killed in the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. So she has kind of like a keen eye for the players and the events to such an extent that she could begin to forecast things that would happen, which was fascinating. And she published in Realist magazine, which was edited by Paul Krasner. It was actually funded by John Lennon. He put up $5,000 for the printing costs of the magazine. So she was running in some pretty interesting circles, and the more I learn about the circles she ran in, the more kind of interesting it is. And then in later years, so August 1977 broadcast, number 282, she talked about Jim Jones and the People's Temple and their move to Guyana. And she speculated that it might be a training camp for assassination teams. And it wasn't much more than a year later when 913 of the members of the People's Temple were massacred because they drank the Kool-Aid or were shot in the back of the head. And then much of her broadcast on March 29th, 1981 was talking about the power struggle between the Eastern establishment and it kind of reminded me of this book, The Cowboys, what is it? The Yankee and Cowboy War. Because there was a fight going on between kind of the Eastern establishment and the upstarts. And the upstarts represented by George H.W. Bush. So when she was broadcasting, she was talking about the power struggle between the Reagan administration, and she was asking who was going to kill off who first because of this big power struggle. And then the next morning, Reagan was shot by John Hinckley. He survived, but the assassination attempt happened that very next day. So that's another kind of example of her prognostication skills. And she spent a lot of time talking about Nazi connections to Dallas and to the big event. And she had that huge list of white Russians and former Nazis who were, or Nazis who were associated with the big event. And she kind of came across in Marina Oswald's handwritten notebook of poetry in the Warren Commission exhibits the name of Adolf H. Schicklgruber. Now, what was that doing in Marina Oswald's poetry in the Warren Commission notes? And this is George de Mohrenschildt on the left here. And this is Walter Dornberger. He was the head of Bell Helicopter, who Oswald's handlers worked for Bell Helicopter. Michael and Ruth Payne, and de Mohrenschildt was his handler initially, and he handed them off to Michael and Ruth Payne. And then here's George and George Jr. Pretty interesting pick. So that's a little bit about Mae Brussell and why I find her work fascinating and interesting. Do you all have any thoughts or input on that? Does it make sense, or have you run into this before, or have you run across her work before?
I hadn't. Frankly, after over a year and a half of autonomy, I'm no longer shocked by much of anything that gets turned out these days.
Yeah. Okay. So see, like, why study this stuff? Like, why try to understand what's going on? Well, it's really relevant to what has happened, what's happening now, what's happening during our lifetime, and like listening to her tapes and her commentary, curating these events in real time. When I was a kid, like I would watch the news and I would get the news, but this is so much more interesting and so much more in depth and so much more of the real story that she was uncovering at the same time. So I'm like going through my memory banks and associating like the Iran Contra affair, the Iran hostage affair, like all these big events that they had on the news. She's decomposing all these things that happened in our lifetime. So it's really fascinating to kind of reconnect to those things. And why do this, right? Well, I want to try to build community with you guys. Like it's great to spend time with you all and get your input. And I want to try to see if these tools can help to do investigations. And I think of it as like a crime board, like if you had a murder suspect and then all the connections. It's a little bit like the brain model, but in this, you all can actually interact and put in your research and your feedback. So it's not just one person just talking or presenting or looking at the screen. And yeah, I think the truth is out there. And by going through some of these really well-researched events, we can add to our insights and our bank of knowledge and further our cognitive liberty and keep us from stepping on the landmines that people are throwing down in front of us. And it helps us to participate in history. We're not just watching and consuming, we're engaging, we're producing, challenging assumptions and getting insights and getting that roadmap that helps us interpret where we are now and where things are likely to go, kind of like in the way that Mae was interpreting the conflicts that existed in politics or in government and able to talk about where things were likely to go. So maybe we avoid some things that are going to happen in the future. And if the project went well, people be engaged, we could add to this knowledge base, we'll get a lot of new insight, and you all might actually improve your skills and I'll improve my skills on working with the collaboration tools. And that might lead to like a wider community being involved in a better way of doing things together on screen and off screen. So that's kind of the why I think this project could be useful, helpful. And it was a lot of fun putting it together to start with too. So of course. So let's see, where are we? Let me get out of the full screen. So I wanted to do a quick like icebreaker, and what that is just like showing you how to use the tool. So if you're in the screen now, I don't know, Mark, if you're in there, you could just like go and take a pin and you can pick a pin and put it where you are if you can. See, I'll try to bring you to me. Hang on a second. I'm in presentation mode. I got to get out. There you are. Yeah, so I'm going to take a pin. I'm going to put myself where I am. So it doesn't, well, there you go. So it does allow you to pick a pin. Yep. I can see why it might be a little cooler over there than it is here. Amos and Josh, I'm going to put a pin in there for you. I know where you
Did you want the pin head representing it or the pin point?
I think just the point's fine. And this is a guess. I see the paw up there, so I imagine you all are inside the paw somewhere.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, so are you moving all these or
Well,
are
Mark
we
moves his,
supposed
and
to be
then
able to move
if
these?
you should be able to move yours. So.
Okay. Right. You know, I got it in the tutorial. I'm just trying, do I have to hit the navigation tool?
You're actually not logged on because I don't see you on the board right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Might
So
be
this
that
is
you're-
this is the Miro tool that
yes.
Tim posted the link in with the invitation link that was also in the,
Yeah. All right, let me see. I
that
have
re-
that. I opened that up and I had it, I was looking at it before I went on to Zoom, so maybe that's on it's on another page or something. Let me see if I can.
Hang on, let me see if I can get you back.
Because I
Um,
saw you, yeah, I saw you moving around on it when I was on it before. Oh,
I'm gonna
okay.
drop that link back to you, Amos.
Really, you know what I'm gonna do here? I'm gonna,
We'll get it out all our tools.
okay. How do I, let's see here. Minimize this. I can't seem to get off the screen right now. Let me see here.
It might be that, well, I don't know where I'm sharing, but
Let's see here.
so while you're looking, Mark, there's one more thing that you could do is you can come over here to the left and just grab a sticky note. You pick any color that you want and just drop it onto the canvas. And actually it came out really big. I don't really want it that big, but
okay, I'll be a little clunky because I'm switching between virtual desktops to do this. Let's see here.
Let's see. Exit full screen. Okay, I think I'm getting there now. Let's see. Okay.
yeah, there you go. Mark, so you could just type in there.
What did you intend to have me add?
Nothing. I just wanted you to know that you can do that.
Ah,
And,
gotcha. Okay.
Make sure that, just to test that that works. There you go. Perfect.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so maybe you heard Mae Brussell down there in Santa Cruz.
No, like many
Nice.
things, I think I was too self caught up,
Yeah.
not paying much attention to the rest of the world.
All right. So there's one more exercise, and that is that you can actually, it says draw your favorite fruit with the pen tool. So the pen tool is this guy. And I guess I can pick a color. I got a color. Get a color. There we go. It's either a goat or a pineapple. So Mark, can you see that little tool there? There you go. You just select on the left. There you go, perfect.
Did you say pineapple or goat, Tim?
That's what I'm saying. It's either a pineapple or a goat or pineapple head. I don't know what that is. Is that like a Pope hat? Footprints? All right, fantastic. Well, I just wanted to show you guys some of the ability of the board. And we can have like 200 people in here making comments, dropping stickies, adding content, and then this thing lives on, so you can add to it when we're not online. At any time you guys have a direct link into it. I don't know, Amos, why it won't let you in there, but
I'm sorry. I'm going. Can't figure this out.
that's okay. So all right, so now Mark, you got to tell us what that is. But I don't know what that is.
Okay, there I am. I'm back. I just
Have to
can't.
unmute myself. Very, very poor rendition of Bill the Cat.
Okay, nice, nice. All right, so that's how, that's some like basic functionality for the tool. So when we're in here together, you all can drop links, you can do pictures, you can drop sticky notes, you can make comments, and then we come back and get those things and look at them later. All right. So let's see. So I also wanted to show you kind of there's Darby. Hey, Darby. See if Darby can hear us. Hey, Darby. Glad you could join. All right, so the next tool we're going to look at is the brain model, and I think you all are probably familiar with this. Is that true? Is everybody familiar? If you are, I would have you like write a little note on there, but since people aren't online.
Haven't ever annotated, just looked at Richard's model for a little bit.
Okay, so I'm going to bring the live one down. I can do that. So what I do is, like, I listen to the episode, I put the episode in, and then I start to put the people who were in the episode in the brain model. And most of these people are already in because I've done quite a few episodes, as you can see, to capture the people and their connections. So this is this episode. Yeah, so we have Alan Dulles, Murat and Root, Colonel Orloff, Edith Bouvier Beale, George Bowie, George Morenshill, Gerald Ford. We'll talk a little bit more about these people, but this is just a way to build the connections. As you all know, having seen the brain model that Richard goes through. All right.
I had a quick question about Mae Brussell because, when me and Darren came onto her years ago, it was really fascinating. Some Beverly Hills housewife was like so incredibly well read, and just like the library this lady has is unbelievable. And I don't know a whole lot of background on her. I think we kind of looked a little bit, but we didn't really have much or find much. What do you have like on her background? Anything like?
Yeah. So her, I think her grandfather was like a department store magnate. I think his name was Magnin, and I think they were like Eastern European Jewish descent. And then she married, I think it was a physician, and had 2 kids with him, 2 or 3 kids, and then had 2 kids with husband number 2. And then I think she was finally divorced from both of them at the point when she started doing her research. And the kids lived with her, and she always kind of talked a little bit about the kids. But my guess is that she had a pretty nice alimony or settlement because she didn't have to go to work. She could spend all her time researching, and she said that she used to read 8 newspapers a day, and that's where she got a lot of her information. But then people started reaching out to her and giving her point-to-point information and mailing her things, and she had time to read the books, and she started like seeing people in person and getting in touch with them. And I think she flew to New Orleans and sat with Jim Garrison for a while he had his trial going, provided some information to him. And it's interesting, right? Because she went down some rabbit holes over the years, and she went down a couple blind alleys, I think. But on the whole, on her main subject, she was outstanding, and that's where that critical thinking comes in. Like, okay, she's talking about these things later in her research that might be a little bit off the beaten path or off the assassination conspiracy path, and maybe it gets a little bit flat, or Earth is out there a little bit, but you kind of sift through, and on the whole, it's really just some amazing information.
Yeah, I've followed her a little bit on and off, and I mean, she's been into everything from like you say, from Jim Jones to, I think, and she got into some, some of the murders that were, going on around the, Son of Sam and all these different,
Oh, yeah.
the Zodiac killers and, or whatever. I mean, so she was really into a lot of stuff, but I mean, I love her, what she was talking about, how she, if something it didn't really smell right, then she started to take it apart, yeah, I mean, she was so brilliant.
Yeah, that's why, like, that cultural aspect, like, it's an amazing time capsule of preservation of these things in real time, and she's like decomposing them and digging into them and asking the questions that our community would ask in real time. And in the meantime, people are just getting plowed over by the news every night, and she's asking the hard questions. And I think that I feel connected to her in the way that I feel connected to Richard's work, that he, had the time and the inclination and the intelligence to deep dive these things and then interpret it and come and present it back to us in a way that makes a lot of sense, and put a frame around the world and events that we can actually feel like has a much higher probability of being true than whatever we're being told by others. So, yeah. Yeah, that's right, Darby. She could solve it with newspaper clippings. The FBI didn't want to solve it. Okay, so let's get into like the first episode a little bit. I get back to it. So this is August 25th, 1971 episode, and she started it kind of talking about the Warren Commission report and how the principals were talking about whether they should release it or not, and they had a big back and forth on, well, if we don't release it, the people will think it's a cover up, and Alan Dulles was saying that in the future historians will take a look at it, but the American people don't read. They're not going to give a crap about what's in the Warren Commission report or the evidence. It's too much information, and so Mae, she piped up and said, "Yeah, I'm a housewife. I'll do the research and I will figure it out." So it's amazing what she was able to come up with. And she started with the commission report, and then she bought the 26 volumes with the meeting minutes and the evidence that was published. And just for a refresher, like the people who were on the commission, when they were appointed by LBJ, who pretty much stood the most to gain from the assassination, and he appointed Earl Warren. Earl Warren didn't want to be on the review committee, but somehow he had some leverage there. And then Gerald Ford was on there. He made a point of saying that he would be able to handle the press. And of course, John J. McCloy, he was known as the chairman of the board. And then had Hale Boggs, I think he was from Louisiana. And of course, Alan Dulles, who JFK had fired because of the Bay of Pigs. Here's Alan Dulles with Edward Lansdale, Nathan Twining, and Charles P. Cabell, the brother of Earl Cabell, the mayor of Dallas, in the big event. And then here he is getting the National Security Medal from JFK. Pretty interesting. So that's what she starts off with that. And then, where am I? She goes on to talk about the meeting. There's some meeting with the commission after the fact, like meeting with Earl Warren, the Warren Commission founder, and he said that they needed to assign the API and the UPI, so the news agencies, some of their top people to discuss on a confidential basis anything that anyone would have questions about. So they were setting the news media up to smokescreen the big event back in before it actually, but it just points to it. You know, Darby, I'm going to put you on mute if I can.
Isabella, come on, Donut, come on. Get up.
There we go. All right. So yeah, so they said, you know, if there's any unexplored areas, we'll explore them for you. Don't bother looking into it for yourself. And the independent authors were kind of coming out with information that didn't foot with the official story, so they wanted to get ahead of that. And that's part of that CIA memo, which I need to go look up, that said that, you know, we need to say that people are conspiracy theorists if they're going in to ask questions about the Warren report. And then they actually go off the record when they start talking about Oswald in Minsk, because he went to the Minsk radio factory. And when they talk about George de Mohrenschildt and his relationship to Oswald, and Mae says that she charted which members of the commission attended the 552 hearings, witness hearings, and said it was only four meetings that the commission members actually went to, and that George de Mohrenschildt was the most important witness. He did over 500 pages of testimony, but they had these two guys, Albert Jenner and Alfred Goldberg, historians from the Pentagon, and those were the only people who were at the testimony on the interview. And they had written a story, a cover story for the day after the assassination with a description of Oswald, and that was the same description that they used for the Warren report. It's pretty fascinating. And this is something that I dug up, which is pretty interesting, from the desk of Gerald Ford. In 1964, the commission unanimously decided that Lee Harvey Oswald was the assassin. The commission found no evidence of a conspiracy, foreign or domestic. And as a member of the commission, I endorse those conclusions in 1964 and fully agree now as the sole surviving commission member. And I think that this is in 2000 is what that says when that came out. So he was still pushing the juice in 2000. Okay, so that was kind of the first section. And then she goes into George de Mohrenschildt a little bit, which is a fascinating subject, talking about how he was actually acquainted with the Bouvier family prior to the assassination. And I think he was trying to date like Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis's aunt. And I think Jackie was 9 years old at the time, from what I've read. And so how does that happen? Like, how does this guy who becomes Oswald Handler have that connection to the wife of the family and the wife of the president who's going to be assassinated by Oswald? It's kind of mind-boggling. She talks about Oswald's resignation letter from the Riley Coffee Company in New Orleans. He really didn't do anything there, and he resigned. He wasn't fired. And they tried to make it like he was fired after the fact. So when they were trying to demean him after the fact, they tried to make it like he was fired. And when he arrived in Dallas in 1962, he got a job at this military industrial complex company, Jagger Stovall Childs, that produced maps for the military. So you had to have like a security clearance just to get a job there in most cases. So it's kind of a strange place for a communist defector to get a job. So all of these inconsistencies and discrepancies and coincidences, and they just keep piling up on each other, piling up. And he was going to be a martyr. He said, most of what he said was, I'm not a patsy. Like he didn't, or I am a patsy. Like I didn't do it. He wasn't there to take the fall. And then she talks about the oil people, the White Russians who were dispossessed by the communists, so they were anti-communist, and that there was a community of them in Dallas, and they just read in the paper that Oswald and Marina were in town because Marina was from Russia, and they had a common background. So they met at a party, and that's how they got into the White Russian community, Marina and Lee. And George actually worked for Brown and Root while he was in Haiti. That's why he had to turn Lee and Marina over to Michael and Ruth Payne, because he had business with intelligence agencies to go down and do some work for Brown and Root during the assassination. Brown and Root, as you might know, was heavily invested in LBJ's campaign because he was all about the war in Vietnam and accelerating that. And Kennedy was actually pulling people out of Vietnam and deaccelerating the war. So those people stood to gain quite a bit by having one Mr. Kennedy disposed of.
Yeah, his wife was a major stockholder, I think, as well.
Yes.
In Brown and Root. I don't know if I heard that from Mae Brussell or, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah. I think that is true. So I'm just going to add that.
I got a question about the whole. Why is Lee Harvey Oswald in the what paper was he in that? Oh, he's coming back to the U.S. from Russia. Like, wait a minute.
Wait a
don't
minute.
announce. What is that, and where did that come from?
I think that's all spin. I mean, there was so much. I mean, it's incredible. This guy was an overachiever, from what I could tell about Oswald. He was really quite brilliant, and he was hardly a communist. I mean, it's hard to know really, but anyway, I just think it's all spin. But I don't know, Tim. What do you think?
Absolutely, it's all spin. I mean, he wasn't a communist. He was over there spying, right? So, oh, that's good music. Put John on mute here, man. There we go.
Yeah.
But what
Chris
paper
again?
were they referring to? What are they saying? Like, oh, George, you need to meet with Oswald when he comes back to the U.S. And Mae Brussell said, like, well, the papers said that Lee was coming back to the U.S. Did I mishear something? I mean, I understand that I'm gonna mess up
Yeah.
because my head.
So no.
Did I?
Well, here's what we think, or what the evidence says. Well, he went to Minsk on a mission, basically as a defector, and he married. He either got honey trapped into marrying the KGB agent Marina Oswald, who was the daughter of a general or granddaughter of a general in the KGB, and the idea was that they would honey trap these guys, and they would get back to the United States, and then they would make them miserable and try to get a divorce, so then they could be free to do their intelligence gathering on their own. And that's indeed where it was headed with Marina and Lee. And so they didn't need to read this in the paper. They would have known that this agent and these agents are coming back to Dallas, and they're going to be at this place where we can meet them. They would have been directed to go meet them at this place as their handlers. Yeah. So that's just a bunch of crap. Like, we read it in the paper. Yeah. Okay. And George de Mornacil is just a fascinating story, and I hope that we can get further into that in another discussion. Yeah, but that's what they're saying. Like, George Bowie, this guy, brought General Orloff to a dinner party and introduced him around, introduced Oswald around, but I think it's highly unlikely that they just read about it in the paper, or that it was a chance meeting. There's actually a video, which I tagged in here, of Ruth Payne, who is still alive, I think, or was still alive recently in her 90s, saying that, yeah, we just met him at a party, right? And then I really liked Marina, so I let her come and live with me with her 2 children. Yeah, okay, all right. You want me to believe that? You want me to bite off on that? Good question. Keep it coming. So there were a couple of books that came out, and I thought, we could drop some resources in that we could then go look at. I really liked Mark Lane's book, Rush to Judgment, and he, I think, later got co-opted, and he and May were toe-to-toe disagreement after the 60s, like up into the 70s. And I think he may have been co-opted. I don't know exactly. But what you find is that these writers, the closer it is to the event, the more realistic and plausible what they're saying seems. The further they get away from the event, the more they storytell and diverge from reality, bring people away from the truth. And then I have this book which I was reading today, Thomas Buchanan, Who Killed Kennedy, because she had recommended that in this book, and Accessories After the Fact. In this Buchanan book, he goes back and he talks about, hey, this is not something, this happens all the time in Europe, and Charles de Gaulle was attempted assassination many times, and John Wilkes Booth, and that was proven to be a conspiracy, and McKinley and all the other assassinations in the United States, they tried to pin it on a lone nut, and in many cases it was determined to be a group that was arranging the event, the big events.
It's still going on, seems all the shootings, and it's always a lone nut.
Yeah,
It's worked so well so far. Just keep going.
well, it's kind of like we have Operation Gladio in the United States right now, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm guessing that like the acceleration of these events has something to do with the midterm elections and things not looking favorable for the party in power. So they have to create some great events to turn people's minds. And I actually was talking with my neighbor, and he said that because of the Roe versus Wade decision, his wife, a staunch Republican, was going to vote straight Democrat next time. So that tells me that these things are working, like their psychological effects and the mind control and the trauma, really trauma-based mind control is working on people. It's I don't know how you can look at it and say it's not planned. But anyway, now I'm really getting down the conspirathon. So, so May, like when she learned that Jim Garrison in New Orleans was going to prosecute Clay Shaw and tie him to the assassination, she called down there and she said, go look, like Lee worked at the Riley Coffee Company. And what the hell was he doing there? And so he went and grabbed the landlady and the manager of the Riley Coffee Company. And they said, he didn't really work, but he did get paid. So Lee in New Orleans is a whole other ball of wax that we could get into too, with that Fair Play for Cuba as a cover, and then the supposed visit to Mexico. So
Yeah,
it just kind of goes on.
That's the major hub, the New Orleans and the coffee. I mean, that have you read Dr. Mary's Monkey?
I haven't, but it's definitely on my list of things to read. What did they have to say?
It's a great overlay kind of what's going with what we're talking about, because all of these characters, what's his name, David Ferry and Clay Shaw, and all these guys were at that coffee company, and also working at Tulane to try to develop a polio vaccine. And they also created, with the monkeys, they created these terrible illnesses, SV40 and all that, that created cancer. And then they're trying to send that over to Castro, and so there's sort of an overlap of these groups, kind of, and there, Oswald's involved with that too to some degree. But anyway, it's, I was looking for my copy of it and I couldn't find it. It's been so long since I read it, but it's really a pretty fascinating. It ties in very, very nicely. So I recommend it if you get a chance. And it's a great read. It's just like reading a fiction spy movie or a novel or something. It moves very quickly and it's well done. Jim Mars does the, I think he does he does a, whatever, the, a little
Forward.
write-up. Yeah, the forward, thank you. But anyway, so that I kind of took us off track with that, but there is a nice overlay there.
Yeah, no, I think, that's right on. Like, how did Jack Ruby, he died of his fast acting cancer after he was injected by something by Louis Jolyon West at the prison. And then Mae Brussell also died of a fast acting cancer. And she describes like being held in some room at the airport on her way back from New Orleans for an hour or two, and when which she thinks she was irradiated by radiation. So yeah, there's like connections and coincidences all in there.
When Amos was just talking about like that book, the overlay, I was thinking of another overlay, and I think the name of the book is called Barry and the Boys.
Yeah.
And isn't that all the key players in that story as well? I mean, I haven't read that. I think Darren found a copy of it, but I haven't read it yet. Anyway, so that's like another like overlay, isn't there? I mean, same key players.
Barry Seal and David Ferry and all those guys.
Yeah, that's yeah, there's I'm sure there is some overlay in there. That's like kind of the Clinton, some of the Clinton characters too, I think, right?
Oh,
maybe-
I don't know.
Yeah, so that's Daniel Hopsicker.
Hopsicker, yes.
CIA, the Mob, and America's Secret History.
Occam's razor, it all just seems to fit so much better if you start from the premise that, the lady doth protest too much. It really, so many of these things fit a narrative really well of going out and creating false stories, false narrative, false backgrounds, planting all the things that needed to be there, creating a financial trail, even though the person physically wasn't around, etc.
Well, it's amazing that they're like the intricacies of the cover stories and then how they cling to it even after so long. And I forgot what the survey recent polling said, but I thought it was like something like 50 or 60% of people didn't believe that Oswald did it alone. And yet they're still coming out with these cover stories and there's cover shows. And it must be really important, and they won't release whatever is remaining in the archives.
Well, that's interesting too. I mean, we were just talking about these CIA guys were all debating whether or not, or talk about what information that we need to release that people are going to ask questions about. And it's so fascinating. 75 years later, Trump's talking about, I'm going to release all the information. They still didn't do it. It's like, wow, it's incredible.
What's in there? What is it?
Yeah.
What are you guys protecting? So
Yeah.
the narrative's really thick. Well, so I just want to get some, do you guys have any other like books or resources you want to add to this?
Yes. I just remembered another one. Have you guys heard of the reporter that knew too much?
Dorothy Kilgallen?
Say the name again.
It's like Dorothy Kilgallen or something, right? She got whacked.
She got whacked. Yeah. She was the reporter that was like, she showed up at Jack Ruby's trial, interviewed him. She showed up at all the trials of all the key players, and yeah, she was found dead in her bed, and it was very suspicious. And I can't think of her name, but she was on one of those game shows as well. One of those. What was the name of that game show?
What's my line? What's my line?
Yeah.
TV.
Whose line is it, or something like that?
Yeah,
The
I
original.
found it.
And so,
Yeah.
and then she was like a legitimate reporter, and she was asking all the questions that nobody else was asking. And anyway, that book was on my wish list, and I just came across that a few weeks ago. So that's interesting to see whatever layover that has. And
Yeah, it's
It's on my list.
$3.66 on Amazon.
oh, real wow, okay. that's my budget, so.
You know, I wanted to, I'm gonna have to ask you to do this until I get a handle on this thing, but that those notes on some of the people that were at the coffee shop, besides, there was also, now these guys weren't at the coffee shop, but they were part of this, there was Carlos Marcello, or
Yes,
Marcello. He
yeah,
was a big player, New Orleans gangster, right?
yep.
You know, he was also involved with, along with Dr. Oshner, and he was the lead of the Tulane hospital where they were doing this research. He actually, as a sort of a side story, I mean, these people were all super anti-Castro, right? And this is part of, I think, that brings them all together. Okay, cool. Right. So, but this guy, Dr. Oshner, this is from Dr. Mary's Monkey. He actually, this is a little bit of a side, but he injected his two kids with this new polio vaccine. He killed one of them, and the other one he maimed. This guy's like a super doctor who had a wing named after him at Tulane. You know, so I mean, you know, he just, I don't know, man. I think that was. I just say that because it's pretty wild what these guys were doing. But yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that. So
I got him.
you got him in there?
Yeah. But I don't have him, like, I don't have any
There you
details.
go.
on him. Yeah.
Cautionary, right.
I wonder if he's a paperclip guy.
He was what? A paperclip?
I'm wondering, like,
I don't know about that. He could be.
okay.
That Nazi that went to Bell's, he was a paperclip guy, wasn't he?
Yeah, Walter Dornberger.
Dornberger, right?
Yeah, he's I had him up here. Yeah, this guy. Walter. Because he's a von Braun. I think he was von Braun's boss or something like that. At the rocket center in Penamood, right? The V2 rocket center.
Yeah.
And then of course von Braun's Saturn rocket program lead. I got him in here too because I can't help myself. I'm gonna we'll find him.
You know, when we were talking about, you know, the stuff going down around the elections and stuff like that, this again is a sort of an aside, but I was looking at a Dr. Mercola thing, and his guest, Naomi Wolf, who used to be you know, she was a Clinton advisor,
Yes.
President Clinton advisor, but she's since then, you know, she's
He
really
was also a Rhodes Scholar.
yes, she is, right, which, you know, you got to kind of question all the stuff that's coming out, but she's actually talking about a possible like false flag around the November elections. So, you know, that they can screw them up real good and just do like mail-in ballots and stuff like that. But anyway, that's that's, you know, that's another rabbit hole. So sorry.
No, not at all. I think, you know, that's relevant to our time. So that's what we want to do, like relate the stuff back to what the hell's going on right now. Because that they keep doing the same things. It's the same patterns. So it all just circles back around.
Yeah.
History is rhyming and rhyming.
Yeah, they really have a pretty constant playbook. I mean, you know, right. You see this stuff; it just keeps coming over and over and over. Very similar operations. You know, I mean, they're throwing everything at us right now. So, I mean, I don't know. So, I can't really put it all together. But yeah, there's a lot of it is very familiar.
It's almost like because people are figuring things out, they're trying to empty the kitchen sink onto us, keep everybody confused, and it's working.
Oh yeah.
It's really working for a lot of people.
It really suggests that the suggestions that they're attempting to draw attention away from the fact that the United States is fairly close to bankruptcy and things are not going to get paid. That's a lot of pitchforks. You know, that's hence the freak out of Congress, you know, with January 6th. And it's getting real close. You get enough people. I mean, fear is a scary thing when groups of people act on those emotions, the stampedes and those kinds of mental surges are indiscriminate killers if you're in the way. You know, it's just physically, it's something to
Absolutely.
be avoid at all costs. And even narrative wise, there's just so many of my relationships have ended thanks to all this COVID crap. And now I'm getting better friends. That's, I miss some of the relationships that died, but I'm slowly replacing them with better people. So
we're getting higher quality relationships.
I think so.
Yeah.
But I'm also, it's unfortunately, so like some of those memes, I've just learned not to bring stuff up so much, just let other people talk, smile, don't say much.
Right. Well, I think part of the conflict happens when people feel like they have to be right. They have to prove themselves right. And I liken it back to Mark Twain. It's easier to fool people than to convince them that they've been fooled, because if they have to admit that they've been fooled, then there's a lot of shame in that. And so that's why it's so hard for people to
that's
have
like
humility.
What Mark Passio was talking about, going through the self-discovery. It's very painful.
Yes.
That's a lot of layers you have to peel off, and you know this better than I do. This is your field of getting into people's mental constructs and so forth with the work that you do, I think. But just me, from being one of the poor schmucks who's experiencing it, it's not a pleasant experience.
It's not. And how many pieces of trauma can you stack up on somebody before they break, right? And I think that's some of what we're wrestling now. Just the fact that we haven't folded, and that we're still going, and that we're still investigating, we're still trying to see. That says a lot.
Yeah, me personally, the tack I've had to take more often than not, just to save my sanity, is just to completely encapsulate most of authority and say, okay, you've lost your legitimacy. I don't have consent, and then just leave it for a while as I go off and do other things, or continue with my life that must keep going. And then people say, well, aren't you going to get your real ID? Hell no.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you're going to get your shots and your real ID, and get your chip, and then get your electric car, and you'll be, life will be just grand. Well, you forgot your UBI and then your electronic money, get your electric money, and sorry, Mr. Raintree, I see that you've gone to the liquor store twice this week. You'll no longer be able to be picked up in your electric car for the next 6 weeks. So enjoy yourself at home.
Make those black markets stronger
power.
and stronger.
Enjoy yourself at home with no power.
Yeah, exactly. It might get cold up there. It'll be pretty hot here. That's the issue.
Well,
all right,
I'm out circling that one. I've got the solar panels, and now I'm getting charge controllers and setting up each system. It's like, yeah, I'll do what you want. I'm gonna keep putting along here.
Nice. So we're coming up on the hour, and I wanted to just take some feedback from you guys. I appreciate, like Amos and Mark, you guys trying out the tool, and then you all being here to have this discussion and your input. And wasn't quite as interactive maybe as I wanted it to be from on the screen, but hopefully the material was good enough to like pique your interest and yeah.
Yeah, well, you got mine, man. I love this stuff. I mean, it's more, I love this, and I love this history, but it's kind of more in me, in that, in a certain way. I don't know. I kind of feel it. So, I like what we're doing. I got to get into this interactive thing that you put up there, and play around with that a little bit, so I can do that. But yeah, but everybody now in this group, I think, and has been through autonomy. This stuff's really in us, I think. And I don't know, that's kind of what brought me, I think, to Richard in the first place, and to his sites and stuff like that. kind of a 9/11 where I kind of, well, it's part of my big awakening, there was lots of little stuff before that, but I'm glad to be here.
Yep,
Nice.
ditto, same here. I'm in. Yeah, this is great. I'll check out that board. What was it called again?
Miro, yeah.
Yeah.
Miro, yeah, it should be,
I'll
you
check
should have
that
the
out.
link on the invite, yeah.
Yep.
Um,
I'll check it out.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm in. I gotta jump off though. We gotta
Okay,
take
Josh.
off. So I'm gonna say goodbye now. Good to see
See you, buddy.
everybody. We'll see you
Thanks for
next
coming.
time.
Thanks,
Yes.
Josh. See ya.
Good job. See ya.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this, Tim. And thank you everyone that showed up. This is awesome.
I'm glad you enjoyed, Darby. Thank you for coming. All right, so what I was thinking I would do is try to find another really interesting episode and send that out to you guys. And then maybe in a couple weeks, we can get together again.
Right on.
All right.
Sounds good.
Tim, real quick comment. All that stuff Amos was talking about, Dr. Mary's monkey. Yeah, Amos, if you hadn't jumped in and talked about that, I was out to very relevant to everything. But Tim, Dr. Tent actually introduced me to that story. He, in one of his lectures, he talked about that. He summed up that little story of how Oswald was involved in all that. So you might find that interesting.
Yeah, I heard that from him as well. I love that. Everybody's making great connections and coming together with the best information we can find. It's a lot of fun and really rewarding. So thank you guys for your attention and for showing up. We'll do it again soon.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thanks for
Jeff.
putting it all together, Tim. Appreciate it. And the
Okay,
new
guys.
tools to check
All right,
out.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Au revoir.